Square One DSM is an initiative of the Greater Des Moines Partnership that mentors, connects, and enhances the potential for success for entrepreneurs in Central Iowa.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Startup Stories. Mike Caldwell. I work for the Greater Des Moines Partnership, and I manage all the entrepreneurial activities for the partnership, including Plains Angels and Square One Accelerator, etc. Welcome, everyone. This is something we've been doing for about 10 years at the partnership. It's economic development targeted at startup companies. Anything from I have an idea, I'm not sure what to do next, to I need to raise millions of dollars, and I'm not sure how to do that either. This event's a monthly event. We take only December off, otherwise we run every month. The next month is Katie Patterson from Happy Media, which most of you will know as a marketing company here in town, a digital media company, marketing company, but they actually have a product they sell nationally. And it's a hardware-software combination product. And a lot of people don't know about that, and it's something fairly new. And so that's what we're really going to be focusing on when we have our meeting with us next time, is talking about what it's like to do your first computer hardware product. It's pretty interesting. Those of you who've done it before, you know, but it's a pretty interesting experience. Other than that, I wanted to let everybody know in advance we are going to do Accelerator DSM again next year. It was a big hit. Our feedback from the survey was amazingly positive. And so we will be announcing dates, actually, this year for May of next year. So that's going to become an annual event, it looks like, and we'll stick with the one day. And if any of you are interested in sponsoring and seeing after the meeting, we can use your help. So with that, Brad, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
You really went to North Korea?
Barely.
Barely. Okay, let's start with that. What were you doing in North Korea?
Well, I was in South Korea, and we went to the border with North Korea, and you can tour and see where all the soldiers are, you know, constantly facing off with each other. And you can go where they had the negotiations for peace talks back in the day, and there's a line on the floor. The buildings were actually built on the border between North and South Korea, so they had a South Korean Special Forces guy stand at the North Korean door so nobody can come in. They say, okay, for 5-10 minutes you can walk around the building. Just so you know, if you cross this line into North Korea, you're doing so at your own risk. So I went over there, took my picture, and that's how they said.
So this is right after the guy that tried to steal the sign and got put into 10 years hard labor. And I've been reading about this. And the next thing I know, he's on Facebook posting pictures of himself in North Korea. I'm like,
you posted on Facebook?
Yes, he did. Of course he did. We live in a digital world. So, all right, so let's back up. You have owned Hatchlings for a number of years. I think everybody there was probably familiar with Hatchlings, but I don't need to go too much into that. But what sent you over to Asia?
So it was kind of a personal journey for me. Probably 2 or 3 years ago, my wife and I, were talking and decided that we wanted to go do a around-the-world trip. And at the time, I thought that meant, I'd have to sell my company so that I could go have the freedom to travel. And so I actually explored doing that for about a year. I was working with an investment bank, and one of the feedback things that we got from people trying to sell the company to was that, it was a hard sell because I was so integral to the business. If I sold it to somebody, it's not really worth a lot if, they need me day to day and I want to go travel the world. And so, in kind of thinking about that and realizing that with me as like the central cog that needs to be there day to day, number one, we couldn't sell the company, and number two, I couldn't go travel like I wanted to. I started trying to think a little bit creatively about, how can I solve this problem? And, taking me out as a central cog and proving that, I can go travel the world while the company still runs and, progresses would solve 2 problems. I could travel and, hopefully now I've proven that, me being there day to day is not an essential part of the business, and hopefully that makes it more valuable to somebody who might want to acquire it someday.
Yeah, it really does. It's one of the founder's problems when you are founder of a company. If you do wish to exit at some point, most of us at some point want to have an exit of some type, or at least just get out of the day-to-day. It's a real different thing to not be the day-to-day person running it. So that first month, how did it feel not being the person day-to-day?
It was actually kind of cool. So before I left, I actually did a trial run and went part-time last summer. And so I was planning out, what am I absolutely essential for, and figuring out, you know, how can I remove myself from that, how can I build tools to let other people do that, how can I shift some of that responsibility off to other people on the team. And you know, it actually reduces a lot of the stress once you realize, you know, if I'm sick for a month, or you know, if I'm gone, you know, things keep going. It makes you feel like you have a lot more stability and freedom.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it makes your company more durable. I know that these days it's pretty common to have remote employees, and I think about people. The challenge with growing a startup is people try to do everything themselves and they can't let go, and it's a great exercise. That's why I thought this was a really interesting topic, because I think a lot of you with startups are going to face this, where you have employees remote, and because that's what they want, and they're the right talent, and then several people in the room that have remote employees, and learning to manage them is different when it isn't, you know, me looking at the person every day across the room or to the next room. It's a totally different deal. So tell us about how you set it up. What were the things you put in place? What kinds of tools, and not necessarily the specific name, but what kinds of tools did you do?
Well, maybe Karen should be the one giving this talk, because she's the one who's been doing this for longer. She's our lead designer, but she also has been managing our remote illustrators for the last probably 3 years. And so we kind of took a look at what she was doing to manage them and what worked well for them, and thought about it for what would apply to the whole company. So we, of course, set up a lot of communication tools. So I mentioned I worked remotely last summer, so we are constantly on Slack talking to each other. We use a project management tool called Asana that makes sure that everybody's on the same page of what the tasks are that, you know, are in progress, and deadlines and all those sorts of things. And we got kind of rigorous about, you know, every Tuesday we have a team meeting that's kind of a state of the union, so we're all on the same page, and kind of made sure that we could all work independently of each other. And we found that some things are pretty easy to do remotely, and some things are a little bit harder. And so, like, we found that the creative side of things, of actually like building big new features or building big games, that's a lot easier when you're in the same room with somebody. But a lot of what we do with Hatchlings is actually, you know, content creation. So we build technology, but what we sell is content to our users. And so a lot of what we do is, you know, coming out with a Halloween event or a Thanksgiving event or a Black Friday sale, and those sorts of things. As long as we have kind of a general overview of what we want to do, you know, the pieces can kind of fall into place, and each person can take their role and do things independently, and then it all comes together at the end. And so it was, yeah, I mean, deciding what we wanted to do over the next year and how to go about that.
So you have a repetitive process of creating and delivering content.
Yeah.
And so my guess is you got pretty good at that process.
Yeah, so one of the interesting things was, you know, over the first several years of the company, we never had like a long-term plan. We always knew, like, the next, you know, 1 or 2 months, these are the things that we want to do. And in preparing for me to go, you know, out of the country for 7 months, we sat down and had a big meeting of what we wanted to accomplish over the next year. And so we kind of outlined, you know, in September we want to do this, in October we want to do this, November we want to do this, which is super helpful to look back and say, okay, you know, Christmas is coming up, these are the things that we need, you know, this is what we need from each team member before that, and, you know, you're not having to fight fires at the last minute because you don't, you know, have everything that you need.
You just became the great commercial for doing a marketing and execution plan. When people talk about, you know, what's different between a startup and a corporation, and what can startups learn from corporations, the one thing I learned helping grow a small company to a big corporation was that kind of planning is incredibly valuable, even though it's painful at times. You learn that it's really a valuable tool. What didn't work?
I think, so it's nice to be able to say that I could be completely disconnected, but there were a couple times where I was completely out of touch with the civilized world. I went to Myanmar for 2 weeks, and I knew ahead of time, you know, the internet infrastructure is not good there, so I was not going to be able to check in and do anything. And I didn't have a coder back at home to fix problems, and so kind of the unforeseen things that pop up, you know, there were times where I wasn't accessible and a bug came up that needed to be fixed right away, and so that kind of lingered for a little bit longer. So really, we should have planned a little bit further for like the contingency situations, you know, the things that you can't plan for ahead of time, having, you know, someone to fight fires.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you're the founder and the person responsible for the code, that's a 24/7 job that doesn't go away because you took a day off.
Yeah.
Interesting. So why did you do this trip? What else? What was the personal reason? Give people the background on why you did this.
So there's a couple reasons. First, I really love to travel. I think it's kind of enlightening to see things firsthand. So one of my favorite places that I went was China, and it's amazing to see how different it is on the ground from what you read in the media. You always read about China being this big bad communist empire that's the enemy of the United States, and they're going to be challenging us for dominance in the future. But then you go over there and you see that the people are very similar to us. And in many ways, it's a lot more entrepreneurial culture than we have here. There's so many small businesses starting up, and it's just really cool to see, with your own eyes, the differences in our cultures and realize that, people are people everywhere. So that was one thing. I wanted to go see things with my own eyes and, see what the world is like. But also, so on the business side, I'm trying to figure out, what I want to do next after Hatchlings.
Right.
Going out and seeing what the actual problems are in the world and thinking about ways that you could solve them, and doing some deep thinking about what is the world going to look like in 20 or 30 or 40 years, and what are the big problems that are going to need to be solved. So I was thinking about what I want to do next, and then also I was interested in developing an investment hypothesis and thesis, and so I have some observations that I've made that I think I can hopefully invest in things that are going to be valuable in the future based on how I see the world changing.
Yeah, and it's interesting because a lot of investment is done such short term right now. I mean, people that do any tracking of the stock market, it's so in your face this quarter, and it's those long term trends that are going to really make the differences. I was part of the lithium-ion battery revolution. We were the first customer of Sony Corporation to buy their lithium-ion battery cells ever in the world outside of Sony. And these batteries were amazing compared to what we had. But that was in the late, I want to say early 90s, mid-90s we did that. And here it is just now when people are saying, wow, lithium-ion batteries are finally getting to the point where we can do great things with them. And some of that stuff you can't see it 20 years before. And if somebody had actually believed in Gordon Moore's law, they might have made even heavier bets in the computer world. So I like your comment about China being the big bad country. When I was traveling a lot in the 90s and early 2000s, it was the United States that was the big bad gorilla. We were the bad people, and it was interesting to be in that role. And it's helpful to remember that we weren't that bad.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things, so I was also in the Philippines and Vietnam, and so right now China and those countries are having a big fight over the South China Sea, and actually being 50 miles from the Spratly Islands where the Chinese are building these military bases while the US is antagonizing them by sending warships through there. It gives you a different perspective when you're actually there than if you're half a world away just reading about what's going on.
Yeah, imagining US and China tangling with each other, in the Mississippi River while we're sitting here. It's real close to home when that happens there. How did the employees do? I mean, what came out of it with your employees when they got back with you and you probably had a chance to talk to each other about what was it like?
Yeah, I was super impressed with how awesome the team did. I mentioned we had that kind of roadmap of what we wanted to do. They also added to that roadmap while we were gone. And so they really took the lead on some projects. So Andrea, who just joined the company about a year ago, came up with an idea for the 12 days of Hatchlings, which
nice.
It was going to be 12 sales in 12 days for the 12 days after Christmas. And they put that together and presented it to me as kind of a finished, this is what we want to do, and here's what we need from you. And so that was actually really cool to see that the team wasn't just following the plan; they're actually actively thinking about what are things that we can do that can be better, and in some ways managing me and the coding side and saying this is what we need from you. And that sale actually went really well. We'll probably do it again. So it was things like that that were cool to see that as the founder of a company, you think of yourself as sometimes the person who's always leading things, but stepping back and letting other people lead and take a bigger responsibility is cool to see.
Yeah, I don't know how you grow something very big without doing that. I mean, seriously, you see these people try to run their own company and just hold everything in, and I think most of them blow them up because, one, you only have so much bandwidth, and two, I know as an employee, if somebody made me, just only do what I was told to do, I would have been gone. It's like, are you kidding? That's not a fun job.
Yeah.
So, we'll all be in the audience. We'll be thinking about what you'd like to ask Brad. We'll turn that in a few minutes. So part of this also is because you got married recently, right?
Yeah.
So this was part honeymoon? Yeah. Well, real quick for us, run down, where all did you go? Kind of just give us the itinerary.
So we spent about 6 weeks traveling throughout China. and then we went to the Philippines and did like a remote island excursion where we took a boat into like dozens and dozens of miles from the next nearest person on these remote islands. And then Amelia left and came back to the US for a few weeks, and I stayed on my own and took sailing classes and learned how to scuba dive in the Philippines. And then after that, I went to Taiwan and Myanmar, and then Amelia and I met back up in Thailand, and we spent the next 6 weeks or so traveling through Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, and then back to Thailand. And then we enjoyed the Philippines so much that we ended up going back to the Philippines and taking sailing lessons together. And then I went to South Korea after that. Amelia came back to the United States. And then we met back up after that and did Europe for about a month.
So you were in South Korea. What did you think of the technology in South Korea?
South Korea and Taiwan were amazing. I thought it was so cool. I went to a professional gaming event, like video gaming event in South Korea, and it was 1,000 people all sitting in a room watching people play video games together, and they followed that and were cheering for that like we cheer for football. It was so cool how into technology the broader culture is there.
Did you run into the high-speed internet over there?
Oh yeah, it was great. It was
crazy.
The fastest internet in the world, I think, is in Seoul, South Korea.
You're in Seoul doing things on the internet faster than you can do them here, which just really wakes you up. Let's open up for questions. Who has a question for Brad?
Brad, I'd be curious to know a bit more about how Hatchlings started. I mean,
how did Hatchlings start?
Sure. So kind of all the way through when I was growing up, I've been putting things out on the internet, you know, starting from when I was in junior high, just like stupid websites, through high school when I did web design for clients and also my own sort of things, programming tutorials. And then when I got into college, I started thinking more about like, well, how can I stop selling my time and how can I turn this into a business that actually brings in revenue that's not tied to how many hours I work? And so my first success was my freshman year of college. I launched a site called DocX Converter, which converted like the new Microsoft Word format was basically a zip file. It would unzip it and you could upload a new file and it would output HTML for you. I spent like 4 hours coding that site and ended up selling it 4 days later for $15,000, which was like my first taste of the success of like the power of the internet and how these things can just scale beyond, you know, charging by the hour. And so I was thinking about like startups that I could do or businesses that I could start. And the next one that I had an idea for was putting your resume online. So at the time, all my classmates were worried that they had heard employers would Google you and they would find all these bad things about you online and you shouldn't post things on Facebook. And I thought of that as an opportunity where, you know, if you could control what people found when they Googled you, that could be a very powerful tool. So I was working on a system that would search engine optimize your resume and tie it into your Facebook profile so that employers would see what you want to see and you could put your best foot forward. And in doing that, I was exploring the new Facebook API and kind of got on a sidetrack and built what became Hatchlings. It was an idea for the world's largest Easter egg hunt. And I built it in a weekend. And the first week we had like 1,000 people sign up and it just kept snowballing. And less than a year later we had 1 million users and just been doing it since then and working off that.
So you and Michael Dell, the college program started.
I don't know about that.
Question? Yeah?
I think a lot of people look and need developers. As a developer, how have you identified needs that you're not able to achieve? Talk a little bit about team building from the other side.
Can you rephrase that? What?
As a developer, a lot of people need developers, right? You're a developer. How have you identified things that you're not that good at and building a team to support your skills? I
see. So to start out, when I started Hatchlings, I programmed it all, and I had a friend that I knew from online that I paid him $100 to draw a couple of digital Easter eggs, and he knocked that out of the park. We launched with just that, or I launched with just that, and realized that, you know, as time went on, I needed more and more artwork. And so it's really been, I kept using him, and I found other illustrators to do that. And so it's really been a need-based thing. So if I need artwork, I'll go find an illustrator on Elance or in the game. We've run contests and hired people from that. For the first year or two, most of what we needed was artwork, and hiring designers was was pretty easy for us. We could just show them, hey, this is what we need, can you do this? And they say, yeah, and then we pay them by the hour. After that, the first need that we had was customer service. And to find people who could help me with customer service, I just went to friends first. So I actually hired a friend of mine that I knew from high school and my sister as our first 2 customer service people. After that, kind of handling the business side of things and paying the bills and the day-to-day kind of back office stuff. I actually hired my mom to do that. She was looking for a part-time job, and she seemed to fit the bill. So for the first few years, it was just going through my network and hiring people that I knew, and that worked out pretty well. Eventually, when we needed to hire full-time employees, I think almost exclusively our employers have been hired through referrals through somebody else. So when I knew that I wanted to hire a full-time graphic designer, I went to a design event and asked the speaker, who do you know who can do this that I can hire? And she recommended Lindsay, who was our designer for several years. Lindsay had a friend who was looking for a job, Abby, and we hired her as our community manager. I think the first one that we hired that wasn't in the network was Karen. I take that back. She was a recommendation from Standard Saturday Manufacturing. So I think mostly we just have hired through our network, which probably wouldn't scale to 100 or 1,000 employees, but so far since we've had a dozen, it's worked pretty well.
Kaylee.
So it sounds like the experiment was successful, and you determined that you don't need to be the central cog to make the company work and move forward. So I'm curious to know what is next for Hatchlings.
So yeah, it was interesting to see how it went for this last year. And like I said, I was part-time last summer. When I came back, I went full-time again. So I mentioned that some of the creative things, like building out big new features and those sorts of things, were hard to do remote. And so now that I'm back, we're working as a team on building out like the actual technology side. So the last 9 months was almost all content releases and that sort of thing. And now we're back and we have this backlog of projects that we want to work on. So for the foreseeable future, that's what we'll be working on. Having a year-long plan worked really well, so we actually had another meeting and came up with like, okay, over the next year, these are the goals that we want for each month. And so even though I'm going to be around, that ended up being so valuable to have that plan that we decided to do that again. Eventually, I foresee myself going part-time again. Like I said, I would eventually like to sell this company and do something else. So I would hopefully, if in 5 years, hopefully we've sold this and somebody else is running it and growing it big, and I can be working on another startup.
I'm just curious, what did you use from you set goals, you set an agenda for the year. Did you use something specific for tracking performance, or did you let the employees track their performance?
Yeah, there's a lot of self-directed, the team is good enough and motivated enough, and they like what they're doing enough that they're kind of self-motivated to do a good job. They enjoy what they're doing, and we're small. There's only 3 of us in the office, right. So it's pretty easy to know that everybody's doing what they need to do. I don't know how we would scale that to 100 people, but
I don't know. I think you can. And it's interesting because I've seen people try to control, and it's starting to less control. Star Trek fan in the audience. It seems like the less control, but the person you trust, the less control, the better they do. Okay.
Brad, thanks for sharing your story. Have you noticed either from your perspective or from your colleagues' perspective that things are different since you came back in the office? Your dynamic with them? So have they remained independent but collaborative?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like the management side of things is not something that I really like to do. My love is programming things and building things, and I think we kind of work, really as a team where I don't think I really micromanage people or tell people what to do. We come together and we decide this is what we want to do, and it kind of all just falls into place of, well, we've got designers and community managers and I code things, and the responsibilities just kind of fall out of that. And, we decide together what we want to do and go forward with it. So I don't know that much has really changed since I've been back. We're working on different things than when I was gone, like I mentioned, but I don't know that the dynamic has changed too much.
You're kind of the big dog. You were before you left. Have the other dogs grown?
Yeah, like I said, they have their own ideas, and not everything that we do isn't like my idea. The team has ideas for what can make the products better, and we filter those out and do the ones that we think are best as a team.
So what about psychologically for you after traveling and visiting such diverse countries and people, and then coming back into the everyday life as a...
Yeah, so coming back, it's actually been fun. I've only been back for a month and a half now, I guess. And having that big backlog of things that, over the last year we added to our to-do list of like, these are the projects that we want to work on. Coming back and having a lot of those waiting for me where I can just kind of like pound through a to-do list has been really fun. So I'm having a lot of fun being back in the office for now. I can see going forward, I'd love to travel or do something like this again. But for now, I really like being home. It's nice being traveling and going across the country, across the world. But there's things that you miss about home for sure. And like I love Iowa. I love living here. I don't think I wasn't trying to escape from here when I left. And so like coming back home feels really good.
And nice to not just have a suitcase.
What's that?
Nice to not just have a suitcase.
Yeah, for sure.
You mentioned how your travels were a bit of a way to see what might be next for you over the investment analysis.
So on the investment side of things, coming up with an investment like hypothesis or thesis. One interesting thing that I didn't really expect, that in retrospect, I don't know why I had this impression that the types of people who are tourists are, Europeans and Americans and Australians, right? Like Westerners traveling. It was amazing to see how many, when you're in China, how many of the tourists are actually Chinese people visiting their own country for the first time. They're domestic tourists. And so thinking about the future, as more and more Chinese people become middle class and more of the developing world becomes middle class, I think that they're going to want to travel themselves. And so I think that the global tourism industry is going to grow absolutely huge over the next 30 years. So I've been kind of trying to think of like who will be the people who can profit from that. Like what is that great rise of the developing world? Who profits from that? And I don't have a good answer for it yet. I have a list of like 50 different sectors or companies that might profit from it, but it's something that I definitely like to talk with people more about and gather varying ideas about.
Well, you got one in the audience that's got a travel business, so
yeah.
Another question back and forth.
So you said you eventually want to exit and sell the company, but in the interim, do you want to grow it, or are you going to keep hiring and figure out a growth stream?
Yeah, that's a little bit of a tough one. So we have tried to grow in the past to turn this into more of a startup of adding more people, adding more games, and we haven't been able to really effectively find a reliable way where we can input dollars and run them through our money machine and output more dollars. The profit that we make from the business seems to be driven not necessarily by like the new games that we have produced. Like it seems to be a bit of a crapshoot. So right now, we're just kind of running this like a lifestyle business. We can run it profitably and as a self-sustainable thing and grow slowly. We have another, we released a game called Puzzlings last year that actually has now grown over the past year to be just as large as Hatchlings. But we're talking about incremental growth rather than a big hockey stick growth like a traditional startup. So I think we will slowly expand the team. We just hired a new graphic designer a few weeks ago, but I don't think we'll. I don't think we would go about like raising outside money in order to hire a bunch of people to jumpstart growth and go into the black or go into the red to do that. I think we'll continue to grow in a sustainable way, at least for the foreseeable future. But I could see. If somebody acquired us, it could be with the plan of, okay, we're going to hire 10 people and, we have a plan to grow this, 10-fold or 100-fold.
But that's part of what the overall game industry is going through right now. This isn't unique to you. There's a lot of game companies that were spun up to be game factories.
Right.
They're going to pump out so many games a year, and they're going to ride that fly, and it turned out that more games wasn't the answer.
Right.
And you survived it. There's a lot of game companies that haven't survived that run. Is there a question over here? No? Question? Yeah, back.
Yeah, just was curious if any of the people that you've worked with, whether it's partnerships or alliances, that would be an interesting path to pursue. If you come out of the advertising business and gamification compensation of whether it's a promotion or training program or whatever was always something that we were looking to do. Is there something like that?
So is an alliance a potential acquisition or acquiring company?
I can see value in a lot of different verticals for partnerships. So in the past, we've tried to do some sort of those things, but it's hard to move the needle on things where those make a lot of sense. I think for now, focusing on the core business of growing the 2 games that we have makes a lot of sense, because that, like I said earlier, you want to have some sort of repeatable process, and so we found the content releases is something that we can do over and over again. We've been doing it for like 8.5 years now, and people will continue to buy new content and keep playing. So that's one place that we want to put our focus right now, and we have that on both of our games. But partnerships, I think, are an interesting sort of thing, but the challenge is that they're all one-off, right? You can make a partnership with one person, but then you have to go negotiate a new partnership with somebody else and do a new thing. Focusing on the core seems more like a sure bet rather than lots of little things that might work well.
Do you think you're going to continue to be the only developer for Hatchlings, or are you going to outsource some of that work or bring someone in to do it and try and have them take the place a little bit?
Yeah, so in the past we've had up to 3 developers, and we haven't figured out how to make that profitable yet. The correlation between number of developers that we've had on the project and revenue hasn't really, those haven't really matched up. Adding more developers has not enabled us to grow our revenue in the past. I think we could figure out a way where it makes sense, right? If we hire a developer and pay them $100,000 a year and find that the work that they do brings in more than that, I think that definitely makes sense. But right now, like I said, a lot of our business is content rather than the actual technology. The technology at this point we've mostly built, and it's just minor tweaks. And so if we could figure out a way that would make sense, or if there was somebody that acquired us that had an idea for how to make that make sense, I think that might be a path forward in the future.
Do both your games still live in the world of Facebook? Are they separate from it? How does that work?
Yeah, so Hatchlings is basically Facebook only. We have people who play it on mobile web, but it was designed before mobile was really a thing. So it's been tough for us to figure out how to transition that over. Puzzlings, on the other hand, there's an app on Android and on iOS. But almost all of the revenue still comes in through Facebook. We did have a game, Hatchlings Match, that ended up being the #1 game in Uruguay, and it was huge in South America and Eastern Europe. But we never figured out how to make any money off of that. Nobody would pay for it, and so even though we had 5 million installs, it was not great for business. So that's been a challenge as well.
Hard to sell that as in Uruguay?
Yeah.
I can believe it. Yeah.
I guess for what it's worth, and I'm drawing a blank on the company that just did it, I just saw an announcement in the last week, maybe this week, an online digital company, probably a mobile company, is essentially bestowing shares on all of their users. So everybody that had downloaded Hatchlings becomes an owner of the company. I'll try to find it, but maybe something to think about instead of selling Hatchlings to strangers, and who knows what they do with it. Maybe there's a way to liquefy the value that you've created in Hatchlings by selling it to people who love it and nurture it, and cuddle it and all that kind of stuff. And you don't have to sell it for a lot if you have these millions of users. A couple bucks each to become an owner. Let me tell you, you can go back to Myanmar and buy it at your own item, which I'm sure you're thinking about anyway. But I'm the crowdfunding for selling equity now, which is now only recently.
Kind of like what Green Bay Packers did.
Yeah.
Sold stock by Hatchlings.
And that's exactly what I was saying.
Supposedly those fans ever look to see what they can do with that stock.
Yeah,
it's nothing.
They buy those things and it was a gift, and it goes on Junior's walls on the Green Bay Packers. And once a year they have an annual meeting, and I'm pretty sure your annual meeting would be a lot of fun.
Yeah. I did see Reddit, when they took their most recent round of funding, they were talking about starting a cryptocurrency that would be distributed to users.
Yeah.
And I think they had some legal issues with that, because I haven't seen anything come out of that, but it's definitely interesting.
I mean, it's now legal to do it with ownership.
Yeah, I mean, it might be something to consider. I don't know.
I'll find the thing.
Okay.
You might be able to have your cake and eat it too.
Cool.
So you do a lot with Facebook. You got involved with Facebook early. You still track what's going on with Facebook and attend conferences. What do you see with Facebook? I mean, just because a lot of people are building, not necessarily on the platform, but a lot of us depend on the platform for ad communications, building mind share. What do you see there?
Yeah, it's been interesting to watch them develop over the years. I think, so it is becoming a lot more pay to play on Facebook. You know, they're really trying to monetize their core platform. And so for businesses, I think that will be a bit challenging, right? They were sold on this premise of build up your audience on Facebook and, you know, communicate with your people that you already have connections with, and then that was pulled out from under them, and now it's, oh, well, you have to pay again to communicate with these people. I don't know how that will develop long term, but I think that's always like the challenge, right? Is in the early days, the companies need you, right? And they want you to build, and so they give you these things for free, and then later on, you're the one who needs them, and so they kind of perform this bait and switch. So I think it's challenging, but it's going to be the same challenge with every other platform, right? Snapchat right now is in the opposite phase. They're giving out a lot, but you know, as they develop and want to develop a business model, you then become the way that they monetize. So getting in early on a platform is mixed, right? Like you can have a lot of success in the early years, and you know, like Zynga, for instance, they raised $100 million in venture capital, plugged that into Facebook ads. That was great for Facebook at the time because it increased their revenue. Great for Zynga, they bought up 100 million users and took over the gaming space. But as that power dynamic shifts and the businesses that are on the platform, you know, become the less powerful of the two, I think that's just kind of a natural evolution of the platform.
You know, it's not new because when Henry Ford started the Ford company and started selling dealerships, he begged people to be a dealer. I mean, you go into literally gas stations, especially in the more rural areas, anybody can be a Ford dealer. And because it was so desperate for dealers. And the only thing that saved them from being wiped out over time was the creation of franchise laws in states, which probably isn't going to happen in the digital world, but in the physical world, the only reason a Ford dealership or a Chevy dealership is worth anything is because you actually have a right to hang on to that franchise. The corporate can't just take it away.
There have actually been some efforts to unionize app developers, or create some sort of governing body where any individual app developer is not all that important to Facebook at this point, or iOS, or the Android platform. But
as a group,
right? As a group, if Apple has to contend with the lobbying group that is behind all of the apps together, then you have a much more of a partnership scenario where Facebook or Apple can be pressured into doing things that are good for the entire community rather than for Facebook or Apple.
Other questions? So while people are thinking, the Apple Developer Conference is going on this week, and I believe they've changed the App Store, and it sounds like you're able to buy ads in the App Store. What do you think of that?
So Facebook did that too a few years ago, and it actually didn't turn out to be all that lucrative of a thing for Facebook developers to buy the search ads.
Right.
It'll be interesting to see how Apple does that. I think that it's interesting to watch what they're doing because they don't really need to make the revenue off of those ads. That's going to be such a tiny portion of Apple's revenue. It kind of confuses me as to why they would put so much emphasis on that particular area when app discovery is such a huge problem. That's one of our challenges with mobile is you can create a great app, but how do you get users to figure out that it's out there and to download it? And if you have an app that's worth $1 or $2 lifetime value of a user, you can't spend $3 or $4 acquiring that user. At least not sustainably.
No, I mean, it's a common discussion I have with people that have got an idea for a game or an app that they want to sell. It's like, don't write it. Go figure out how to sell it because there's no sense in spending the money on it until you can sell it. Question back here?
So going off of that, how have you worked with that, finding people?
How do you find your customers?
Yeah, so that's one of our core strengths, I think, is viral distribution. So in the early days, like the core kind of feature of our game was actually a viral loop. So Facebook used to have boxes on profiles that apps could put content into. And most people are using that for like a high score list or just, like an advertisement. We actually built our game around that. So we would hide Easter eggs on people's Facebook profiles, and people would see it and be like, what the heck is this? And they would click on it, and that would take them into the game. They'd get started in the game, and that would add one to their profile, and then their friends would see it and be like, what the heck is this? And click on it, and the cycle continued. And so that's how we were able to get our first 1 million users over the first year. And as time went on, Facebook, obviously is a changing platform, so that box went away probably a year and a half after we started, and we had to figure out a new way to grow. And so our next viral loop was in gifting, so we allowed users to gift eggs to their friends, and they could get rewarded for doing that. So if you helped your friend get an egg, you would get points in the game, and so by getting new people into the game, you were benefiting yourself. So really our strength has been figuring out how to leverage our users to get more users, and like thinking about how can you incentivize people to want their friends to be using your system is a really powerful sort of thing. As time has gone on, Facebook has really clamped down on what you're allowed to do and those sorts of things. But there have been probably a half dozen of these features that we have discovered early or discovered a new way to use them early. And those viral channels tend to be like disposable. So like if you find one before everybody else, you can really leverage it because it's a novel way to acquire users, and you should cram the hell out of it because that in 6 months the ecosystem is going to change, or the rules are going to change, or the platform is going to change, but in the interim you have a really big opportunity to spread for free.
Sorry,
No, go for it.
how did you come about discovering that? Sitting down and being like, oh, this is the thing?
Yeah, there's a really good book, I believe it's called Viral Loops. When I started Hatchlings, I think I had just read that. I had also read a book called Founders at Work, which is great. It's by one of the founding partners of Y Combinator, and it goes back to like the 1990s and investigates a bunch of companies that really took off in the internet boom, and talks about like the early days of them. And one of the interesting ones was Hotmail. And the way that they grew this webmail company was that at the bottom of every email it said sent through Hotmail, and it had a link back to go through. So all their users using it and sending out these emails were basically advertising for the service, and it just grew on itself. And so I think in the early days that was really, the idea wasn't how do you start an Easter egg hunt? It was, whoa, this profile box thing's really cool. People aren't really utilizing it, and the game was actually built around this viral loop. It was a game that was built specifically because I observed that there was this thing that could be used for viral growth, and a lot of our features have been built around viral loops as well in the future to kind of grow that out.
And if you think about that, the challenge we all face as entrepreneurs right now is getting new customers, and even if you can afford the ads, most of them don't work. I mean, doing customer acquisition cost based on paid spending almost never works. I don't know very many companies that could sustain themselves with their entire sales funnel coming off paid advertising. I just don't know.
I mean, it depends, right? If you're selling something that's $1,000 or something.
I guess, yeah. I was thinking more
different
the
businesses.
context of internet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other questions?
So of the countries you traveled, take out China, take out Iowa. 15 years ago, you were looking for the next Brad Dwyer, or the first Brad Dwyer venture. Where would you go?
I don't know about 15 years ago.
Well, take out China and Iowa. Where would you go today?
Thailand was really interesting. I went to a co-working space in Bangkok, and there were some really interesting startups there. And there's a community called Digital Nomads, which are basically programmers and digital people that travel around the world and work from wherever. And Chiang Mai in Thailand actually is a huge hub of those people. They all kind of coalesce around this one startup community. And there's a lot of interesting people building interesting things there. In terms of expats, I think that would be a good place to start. In terms of the local economies, I'm not really sure. China's interesting. I think it would be challenging because of the government regulations. One thing that I really struggled with there is, I run a Facebook gaming company, and Facebook is blocked there. Google's blocked there. I couldn't really use my email without a VPN, which they're really cracking down on VPNs as well to tunnel through the Great Firewall of China. Some days the internet just didn't work there, which I think that would be challenging in trying to build a modern company someplace where the internet's really locked down. If I was going to go live somewhere today, I think it'd probably be Taiwan. That felt like going in a time machine 30 years into the future and looking at what China's going to be like. It's super modern, but it's very reminiscent of like the culture, and the people are very similar to China, but it's a lot more modern and developed, especially in terms of the economy. Korea as well, they're these really advanced economies that in a lot of ways are more futuristic than the US economy.
Any last questions before we wrap this up? Well, Brent, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.